mystery and wonder, where legends echo through the ages like whispers in the wind. There exists a place where history meets intoxication. Welcome, adventurers, to Legends and Libations,
where we'll be sipping through history.
We're your hosts, Jesse
and Matthew. Join us as we embark on a journey through the annals of time, delving into the myths, the heroes, and the tales that have shaped civilizations. But this isn't your normal history lesson. No, here we add a twist, a splash of the finest spirits from around the globe.
From the fiery depths of ancient myth
to the most convoluted of conspiracies.
Each episode uncorks a new legend paired perfectly with a hand-picked libation.
So hold on tight as we traverse the sands of Egypt,
the forest of Celtic lore,
and the bustling streets of medieval Europe.
With each sip, we unlock the secrets of the past, revealing the essence of humanity's greatest stories.
So grab your favorite glass, pull up a chair, and prepare to be transported to a realm where legends come to life and history is best enjoyed with a drink in hand.
This is Legends and Libations,
sipping through history.
Let the journey begin.
Guys, welcome back to Legends and Libations. This is season 1, episode 4, and boy, we have a good one for you tonight.
Oh, I'm glad to be back.
We've had a little bit of an extended break. Actually had a kid, and he's doing pretty well, but he put a little delay on our recording process.
A little delay. We said every 2 weeks, but we need to give a month this one.
Yeah, we wanted to do a good job for you too, so we could have rushed out a show, but
yeah, we could have given you some crap, but we know you guys are here because you want to hear
quality content.
Yeah, you want to hear quality content that you know
about things
be true.
Right, exactly. About completely unsubstantiated claims. What are we talking about today, Jesse?
So today we're going to be talking about the island of Atlantis.
One of my favorite legends by far.
Oh, man.
What are we drinking to go with it?
Yeah, this week. Atlantis is hard to pair a drink with
because it's not like you can just go there and pick up
I
the local brew.
I looked up local brews in Atlantis, and it's like
you realize it wasn't like a real place.
I got seawater.
Oh,
yeah. So I thought, damn, I gotta do something salty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have any of you guys not been to the ocean? It is in fact actually salty. If you haven't tasted the water, try it. It's salty.
It's like too salty, like twice of a Gatorade salty.
Yeah. But also I was thinking we're going on an adventure. You know, when you think Atlantis, you remember that show Atlantis, the movie, Disney movie Atlantis.
We watched that 3 nights ago to prepare for this.
Yeah,
with Michael J. Fox.
So good, right?
Yeah, you couldn't even hear his Parkinson's in it. It was so good.
Yeah, but it makes you feel like you want to go on it. I didn't know he had Parkinson's.
Oh yeah, he's like the poster child for Parkinson's.
I should know better. Anyways. It makes you want to go find this lost island.
Oh yeah, it's very inspiring.
So I was thinking sea travelers, seafaring, and I was thinking last frontiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not space; it's the ocean.
Right. I love the ocean as the last frontier.
Yeah. And so I was thinking of a place that I went to in Alaska, and I think you went there too.
Oh,
Homer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Homer.
Yeah.
I've been there before.
Yeah. There's this little peninsula.
It's called the Spit.
The Spit. The Homer Spit.
Homer Spit.
And if you go out there, there's a little pub or shack called the Salty Dog.
And it's always bumping.
Always bumping. But you can, in fact, buy a Salty Dog there. Salty Dog is either gin or vodka, which we're doing gin today.
We're doing gin.
And we're doing Bombay Sapphire Gin. I think, when I think seafarer nation, I either had Spain with the Armada or I had England. And I went England because they're super seafaring, or they were at least.
You mean England because they colonized
everything?
Everything.
Because Absolutely. They were so good at
they
sailing.
Probably colonized Atlantis.
Yeah.
it could be Atlantis. Anyways,
So we're going to try the salty dog
and then it's also grapefruit juice.
and grapefruit juice.
Because we need to keep away the scurvy when we go on an adventure. But then it has a salt rim because of that saltiness that you drink in Atlantis. That's what's here. So let's try it.
All right. And I didn't have a salty dog in Alaska, so this will be my very first salty dog.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. What's your heart telling you about it? I feel like I'm getting rid of scurvy.
It's going to keep scurvy away. I mean, if it kills me, it's still keeping scurvy away. But it has a lot of strong flavors going on because you got the salt on the rim. Grapefruit juice is like one of the most bitter things known to mankind because it's that juice that you can't have with certain medications because it'll like mess it up.
Yeah.
It's the only one too. And then gin, which has its own distinct flavor.
Gin. I'm juniper berries. Nothing in this really seems to correlate, just like Atlantis.
Would you know a juniper berry if you saw it?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
It's just a little red berry, but it's on the juniper, like the junipers, I guess. I'm for anyone listening that is actually a herbologist, we're sorry.
Or a botanist.
Yeah.
Herbologist if they go to Hogwarts.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, if I'm correct, I've had a juniper bonsai before. I didn't keep it alive very well.
Oh, like a bonsai tree.
Yeah. And
that's cool.
Yeah, they're kind of like a little evergreen, but they have berries on it, and apparently the berries that woodsy taste that juniper or that gin has, where it tastes like a pine forest, is from the juniper berry.
Did you ever hear about that story about these thieves that stole like this ancient bonsai tree in Japan? And it was like hundreds of years old. It might have been like 1,000 years old. And the person who was like in charge of keeping after the tree, they went on the news to tell the thieves how to take care of the tree because it was so sacred and so old and rare that they didn't want them to just like let it die on accident.
Wow.
That's caring a lot about a tree.
Yeah. Like I care more that you keep it alive than you do that then I get it back.
And you know where we don't know if there are trees or not currently?
Atlantis.
Is Atlantis.
Yeah, I feel like
We had to circle back around.
Yeah, and when you're on the other side of the world, it's hard to.
Exactly.
So,
well, there's no telling. There's a lot of different places that Atlantis could potentially be, as we will see in this episode.
Oh, I'm very excited to hear about this
Okay.
because, when I think Atlantis, again, I got the Disney cartoon in my head.
I like that Disney cartoon.
What I found out is Plato was one of the earlier writers, the earliest writings that we have of today about it.
Not one of the earliest.
He is
The source.
the source
On it. The only source out there is Plato.
Yeah.
Everything else comes from him.
Yeah. So he's the beginner of this.
And he doesn't even know about Atlantis firsthand. It's not like Plato went to Atlantis.
No. He heard it from a song by what's that guy's name?
Solon?
Yeah, Solon. That's Solon in Egypt.
And I don't even think that Solon was a historian. I might be wrong, but he was a statesman or like a politician type of ancient Greece.
Yeah,
and he went on a trip to Egypt and they told him about...
And they told him.
Right, they told him. So it's already like third hand or fourth hand what they knew about Atlantis or what they had heard in their legends. So it's getting diluted like several times before it even gets to Plato.
Yeah, definitely not like Plato. It's already like, you remember that's the way that you used to tell like a secret in someone's ear, and then you'd have to go down long. Yeah, telephone game, and by the end, it's like that, but like thousands of years.
That happens a lot in no matter what year or society that you're in.
So,
but Plato lived around 400 BC.
Yep. Apparently, actually writing this down about 360.
360. Yeah, that's what I wrote down too. And but his account of Atlantis is coming from thousands of years before his time.
Yeah.
And Solon didn't live during Plato's time. He lived like a couple hundred years maybe before him.
Yeah, they didn't hang out.
No, they weren't friends. I don't even know how he got the account from Solon.
Yeah, maybe like the passed down orally, like stories told. And so what an interesting read this was.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So there's two dialogues that Plato wrote, and well, two of many, but the two that mention Atlantis are called Timaeus and Critias.
Yep.
And what does he say about Atlantis in these dialogues?
Yeah, so essentially there's kind of like this first it goes over some of the mythos of it, like the creation of it, right? So in the beginning, the gods separated the world and gave different people groups different areas that they were going to live. Primordial man. I'm guessing this is before Prometheus brought us to fire, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure where Prometheus is in the timeline.
Yeah.
But Atlantis ends up going to
Poseidon. Or So Poseidon, he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna take care of these guys. And
Poseidon's one of the big dogs, though.
Yeah,
right?
he's like one of the Olympians.
Yeah.
He's like brother of Zeus. I mean, all the Olympians are like brother or sister of Zeus.
When you think of gods of ancient Greece, you're like Zeus. Poseidon is one of the top three that you're thinking of.
Actually, I don't think Hades is an Olympian because he lives in Hades.
Right.
So
that's why you had like temples in like multiple places that would be Poseidon's temple, because as we'll see later, it's like, well, some of the claims that so and so places Atlantis is that they had a temple to Poseidon. Yeah, but it wasn't exclusive. They didn't have the rights to only Poseidon. He was getting around.
Well, and you know what's interesting is like when we think of religion now, we think, oh, God is everywhere. Like God is omnipresent, right?
That's true.
And that's not true with these gods. In fact, if you see it in the Odyssey, all the other gods meet because Poseidon is out taking libations from the Ethiopians, so he's not paying attention to Odysseus. And so
they're a lot more like man.
Oh yeah, they're like kind of like super people,
right?
But they're immortal. They are the immortal gods, so that they do have that, and they can apparently travel on the wind and things like that. But
they can do all the regular god things.
But but they're not omnipresent,
right?
So you can hide things from the gods.
Exactly.
But Poseidon, very quickly he falls in love with one of these primordial humans called Plato, which is that Plato's invention? Did he have like a romantic idea of him and Poseidon falling in love?
That's funny. That never occurred to me, but that makes a lot of sense now that you say it.
Yeah, or it's just a common name. If anyone knows anything about primordial Greek names, write us. We would love to hear more of them.
Drop a comment.
Yeah, drop a comment, right? Instagram, Facebook, emails, however you want to do that.
So So Poseidon is in charge of Atlantis.
Yeah. And he falls in love with Plato.
And they have numerous children.
In fact, they have five sets of male twins.
Wow. Having 5 sets of twins sounds ridiculous, especially if they have some divine genes in them before they come out.
Yeah, and those divine genes, I think, are really part of Plato's mythos with it. Because
the first son
is
Atlas.
Yeah, exactly, Atlas. Which I only ever know about Atlas holding the Earth. I don't know how he got there.
I'm not sure how he got the job of holding up the Earth, but
here his job is to hold up Atlantis civilization.
Right.
He's given the kingship. Yeah, over the others. He's the firstborn of the eldest twin. So he's given that kind of kingship.
Okay.
The High King of sorts.
And since Atlantis was not just a city, it was a continent.
Yeah.
Or like a land. And that's how it was divided up amongst these 10 sons of Poseidon.
Well, and he has those god powers, so he definitely wanted to protect it because this was the woman he loved, and his children.
Absolutely. So it's like this magical land that's like super fertile.
Oh man,
picturesque.
And so in some ways, the way that's built up is like he has no problem creating. He creates. I both read Plato writes a hot spring and a cold spring.
Hot spring and a cold spring.
So that kind of connects us to Japan, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Hot springs. And that there were mountains to the north.
Yeah.
And it was surrounded by a plain to the north and the south.
Yeah, there was a big plain, and then those plains were surrounded by mountains to protect them.
And there were red, black, and white stones that were comprised the geological formations around there. And another thing was one of the most visually striking things, and my favorite, I think personally, is what drew me to Atlantis is the picture of the capital city of Atlantis, where it has the concentric circles of alternating islands and water and land and water until it gets to like a citadel or like temple in the middle.
Yeah. That's awesome. The freaking detail of Plato on this. you would feel like Plato was out there measuring it.
Exactly. Down to like the kilometer or whatever unit of measurement that they use at the time.
What was that word that they used? It started in that.
Stadia.
Stadia. I'm like, how far is the
stadia? It had something to do with the stadium.
I guess we could have looked that up.
We could have, but this is Legends and Libations.
Not math and math.
Yes.
So we don't know what a stadia or stadium is. But we could just do the football field. It could be like 300 yards.
No, that's okay.
100 yards, sorry.
And then
sorry for those sports lovers.
No, you're good. It probably does have something to do with sports, and I bet that there's like some kind of modern connection to it now because those words always do filter down and
they do.
Stay relevant. But one of the other criteria, okay, so there's so much stuff floating around about Atlantis, and Plato is our only source for it.
Yeah.
And you had different people going in different theories for the last like several hundred years, especially claiming that it's all over the world. And this kind of got a little bit out of hand. So in 2005, these researchers all met together because this was like a big priority in 2005, I guess, before we had like real problems and stuff like that.
Yeah. I love 2005 problems.
Exactly. Me too.
Gosh, what we were like cloning sheep and we were like, hey, can we make the sheep have spider webs come out of its udders?
Exactly.
Or where the heck is Atlantis?
We only had one war going on.
Yeah.
It was, 2 wars in one. But so these researchers got together. I can't remember where they got together, but they established the 24 criteria from Plato's writings that any place claiming to be Atlantis would have to meet these criteria in order to be taken seriously.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that criteria.
Okay, so we've talked about them a little bit, like about the hot and cold springs, and then the mountains to the north. And then one of the key deciding features was that the continent of Atlantis existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules or Heracles.
If you don't know where that is actually beyond the Mediterranean at the edge of Spain and Africa.
Where the Strait of Gibraltar is.
Yeah. You look out, and if you didn't know there was the whole of Americas, that was the end of the universe.
Exactly.
That's for one little country called Ireland, but we'll get back to that.
And some people like to kind of bend this like Pillars of Hercules thing and would say that, oh, well, anywhere there's a strait or whatever, it was known to the locals as the Pillars of Hercules. But from what I could tell, the Strait of Gibraltar, there was so much trade going on.
Yeah.
And the communities weren't as isolated as we'd like to think that they were.
Yeah, they're not like, yeah.
They were regionally like trading with each other and stuff like that. So they knew about Gibraltar, and like beyond that is the big ocean, the Atlantic.
EB monsters over here.
Right, exactly. Right. So personally, I kind of think that discounts a lot of the Mediterranean Sea claims to be Atlantis.
Yeah, I would think so too.
But as we'll see as we get further on, look, there's some good evidence.
Mind you, Poseidon wasn't worried about that at that time because there was no seafaring ships. Whenever he first created Atlantis, or whenever he first kind of established it as its own thing, there was no way to
traverse the sea.
Yeah. That came later, and of course that was actually very profitable to Atlantis, in legend at least when we read Plato's work about it.
And so you might be thinking, oh well, Atlantis is definitely not a real thing. It's a Disney movie. It's a fantasy. It's a myth that's been just like blown out of proportion for thousands of years. But I would like to give some evidence for us to like take the possibility of there being a lost continent or at least a lost city a little bit seriously.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take that because it sounds way more legendary to include it here.
It's like the X-Files. Yeah. I want to believe.
When it comes to this sort of stuff. We're here to believe all of this, guys. That's what we're here for.
Exactly. And did you know that they thought that Troy was a fake city until 1868 when it was destroyed? I mean, sorry, not destroyed, when it was discovered.
Yeah, it was discovered because they literally thought Troy was just mythology. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like,
because it was in the Iliad.
Yeah, Iliad and the Odyssey mm-hmm. and the Aeneid are all built around this like Trojan destruction. Mm-hmm. And what do we find out? That was real war. That was a real war that happened, and there was really the destruction of Troy.
Some guy named Heinrich Schliemann and his wife, they found Troy in 1868, and that's like, in the grand scheme of things, 1868 is not that long ago. It's like 150 years for us to be finding cities that are on the Greek mainland.
I'm under the impression that mythology tends to have truths attached to it. It may not be as straightforward as what the mythology
right.
is.
There's like allegories and metaphors,
and people
stuff
are
like that.
adding things to it. But,
embellishment.
Yeah. But it's like it did happen. Like just like the fish story. My fish was this big.
Right.
They probably did catch a fish. They're probably not lying about that. Just probably wasn't that big.
Exactly.
Right?
They hold it closer to the camera and like back up a little bit so it looks real.
Yeah. Look how big my fish is.
Exactly. And there are a lot of good examples of cities that have been found under the water, or at least ruins.
Oh wait, no, sorry, Venice hasn't.
No, that's in the future.
That's still here.
Don't give away your time traveling abilities just yet. But they have found ruins under the ocean in places like Cuba, Malta. I think that they found one near Alexandria pretty recently. There's a whole continent out past New Zealand that New Zealand is like the highest point of. It's called Zealandia, I think, and they just found that in 2017.
Zealandia.
Yeah, like where New Zealand is like the highest point of this continent that's not connected to Australia or whatever. It's its own separate thing, and it's been sunk below the waters for a while. All of like Indonesia, if the sea level were to drop, Indonesia would become a giant continent.
Let's say there was a very frightful ice age. That would bring all that land up quite a bit.
Exactly, and I'm going to talk about that ice age part. Maybe in a little while.
Okay. Yeah. If I could bring it back to the legend,
bring it back.
Like one of the things that I noticed first, how technical Plato was about all like we already spoke of the length of everything, but also this place was perfect. It had all different types of landscapes. It had mountains, meadows, swamps.
It was a trade hub.
It was a trade hub.
It was busy all day and all night, is what it said.
All the different animals. He made sure that we knew there was elephants there.
That's pretty cool.
No idea why he wanted us to know that elephants were there so bad, but he was like, and there's elephants here. One
of my favorite things about the mythos of Atlantis is that they supposedly had this mysterious metal that was called orichalcum.
Right.
That's never been found. There are no examples of this, but it's called orichalcum, and it's supposed to be somewhere, I guess, like between like gold and silver, or like silver and bronze on like the scale of rare metals or whatever. But it was very distinct to the region, and you knew that if it was orichalcum, and that was coming from Atlantis.
Which comes back into our conversation because in the middle of the city, in this great city where trade never stopped, was a temple to Poseidon and a temple to Plato.
She had her own temple too.
Yeah, I think she got deified somehow.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like a saint being like canonified.
Yeah, canonized.
Canonized. There we go.
Yeah, I don't know. Because that system of religion works very differently than the systems. I mean, so I had a teacher back when I was in school of mythology. He also was my teacher for Greek and Roman history and Greek and Roman or Latin. Like, it was fantastic. So one of the things that he spoke about is when we're thinking of the old religion of the Greeks, we should think very much like almost like how we feel about Native American religion. That it's very that the elements are connected to nature. We need to quit like applying the Judeo-Christian world upon these gods,
and the modern view too.
Yeah, the modern view is so like the modern view.
You got to remember that the lights went out at like 7:00, and then that was it.
And then there was only fire,
right?
And that's it.
And you had to talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. And so these the religion is very built around natural religion. The gods, like Zeus is a storm. Poseidon is the sea and the earth shakes.
And you had the stars and the planets so they could see, that they named after them as well.
Yeah, this was their world. And so like we need not to apply the like same principles.
Right, exactly.
That'd be very dangerous. But yeah, so there's multiple accounts of people being deified in Greek mythology. So maybe she was deified, but here it seems that Plato really says, "Hey, she was deified. This
could be more of Plato wanting to be Plato on the side, sort of thing."
So side lover of Poseidon.
That's funny.
Make me a god, and I'm surprised he didn't do a theme.
Plato was his drag queen name.
I'll drink to that. So, anyways, but what was weird is Plato, when he talks about Poseidon's temple, if you remember, he calls it strange and barbaric in appearance. Everything else in the city is just explained in this most perfect way.
Mm-hmm. So like a utopian society.
Yeah, so utopian. And then the temple to the god, the main god, the creator god of this world, is strange and barbaric.
I wonder why that would be.
I brought that here because I was wondering if you had any ideas on that.
I didn't even come across that in my research, but my one idea would be that Plato would have some sort of like maybe loyalty to where he's from. And you know how we like to barbarify the enemy in a lot of places, even if they do something better than we do. We can't let them be like perfect. And there is the account somewhere of Atlantis going to war with Athens.
Oh, and he's from Athens.
And so they would be enemies.
Yeah.
But that's all I got.
Yeah, I keep getting hung on that because I'm like, why would he describe everything so perfect? And I think maybe I want to attribute that to the strangeness of the gods of mythology. That they're very weird.
Right.
That there's something that doesn't feel settling about them. That I think civilization feels safe. The gods of mythology, nature, does not feel safe. Nature, we think of Vikings, we think of the Irish before, like they've got all the Roman works.
Absolutely.
We think of this people that are wearing furs and it's kind of very barbaric feeling. I think that maybe he's suggesting that the gods themselves are not tame.
Right.
That they're nothing, wild. That they're wild. Yes. And you can't put them into civilization in a very perfect way.
That's interesting.
That here they are in the middle of civilization, but guess what?
They're still gods.
They're still gods, and they're still wild.
Because it's not like he lived here.
It's such a beautiful
view
of religion. Yeah. Honestly, I think we need a little bit more of that.
Did you make that up, Jesse? Was this your own conclusion?
I'm thinking of this. This is my own thinking.
No, I think this has some legs to it. I like it a lot.
Because I think the gods are not safe. There's nothing about early mythology. In fact, if I even read about Christian saints, there's nothing safe about becoming...
Or even like the Ark of the Covenant and stuff like that. Like that was dangerous as well.
Yeah. The spirituality is not safe.
Yeah, like having the guy with the robe.
The guy in the robe. And then, exactly. So, and if you haven't listened to that episode, go back. It's our first one. We can't promise that it's our best, but we can promise we were trying hard.
And the topic is timeless.
It's still fun. Yeah, we might have to come back to it one day. So... that's my thinking, is that the gods are wild, and Plato recognizes that he has no control, and that they're not, that civilization is different.
So going like a little bit off topic, not really, but was Plato? So he was a subscriber to the pantheon of gods and stuff like this at the time.
I think most people were, but he did argue that the gods were not a place to find morality.
Well, obviously not if you're reading the stories about them. Are they ever doing the right thing?
Yeah. The gods were not. He said philosophy. Well, I'm definitely not giving the full
explanation. They're like a good example of what not to do.
Well, they're good. They're good examples of what nature is going to do, whatever the hell it wants. But they are not good examples of virtue, which is why he thought about like philosophy.
Right. It's so interesting that he is able to have both of these seemingly like on the surface contradictory ideas at the same time. And he's like so much about the things that Plato is known for, and then at the same time it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to tell you about the Poseidon and these gods and this war with supposedly this civilization that may or may not have existed.
Yeah, exactly.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. I have a dear friend who he always he's like, if I could go back in time, I'd go sit and listen to Plato, and I'm just like, dude, would you survive in Athens? Are you sure you can do this?
I don't know, dude. Have you been vaccinated? Because you're going to die of some kind of disease in like 3 or 4 minutes.
So anyways, some of the things that were described in the temple are some of the statues.
In one of the places that our documentary we were watching, they had Plato's school. The ruins of it were still there, and you could like go and do a tour of like where he was teaching people.
Oh my god, I would do that in a sec.
That would be pretty cool to go to, just because like the history of even if it's just some like rocks on the ground.
Yeah, that'd be cool to be sitting in the school of Athens. You ever see that picture? Yeah, it's such a cool one.
Well, I don't think it was a picture. It was like a
sorry, the picture of the Renaissance picture, and I don't remember who it's by. I'm gonna say no. I'm not even gonna attempt
time travel.
It's one of the Ninja Turtles. But one of them created that painting.
Well, you've only got 4 guesses, right?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo.
Could be Michelangelo.
Could be Raphael.
I forget the last one.
I don't know the last one. Sorry,
guys. Anyways, I love that picture. The School of Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's such a good one. Yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
Anyway, what were you going to say before I interrupted you about?
Oh yeah, so there's he spoke of the statues and that there was like little shrines to the whole family. And again, all of this is just extremely beautiful. The whole continent is a lofty idea.
It seems almost too good to be true, which makes some people like not want to believe in it.
Yeah. Could you imagine a Garden of Eden with a civilization? Not just Adam and Eve, but
might be Atlantis.
Yeah. That's what that feels like.
It does feel kind of like that. That's interesting, like a biblical crossover. Because as we're going to see in a minute, that there could be some tie-ins between things that happened in the Bible and the disappearance of Atlantis. But do you have any more to add about what Plato said specifically before we get into some supposed places of Atlantis?
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about supposed places, and we'll come back because one of the things he talks about the very technical aspects of their law.
Okay, I don't know a lot about that,
but we'll talk about that more when we talk about utopias. So I don't know where some supposed idea where this place is.
Well, Jesse, if you Google where Atlantis is, I even asked ChatGPT to give me the top like 20 because there are so many different places that
I heard that you could point anywhere on the map, and someone said Atlantis is here.
Absolutely. So let's just go ahead and like get rid of some of them right now that I don't like, and I don't think even hold any water. And I mean, there are some that I personally like a little bit that are definitely not it, probably, but I just enjoy like the fun aspect of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are some that I don't like at all. And we'll start with Britain is probably not it, because some guy was claiming that Britain might be Atlantis, and it was totally like out of nationalism sort of thing.
Yeah, that seems like I'm a colonizer. We're the perfect society, which I will connect back to the utopia thing when we talk about it, because there was a time that Britain, especially Reformation period, thought that they were just the bee's knees of civilization.
Yeah. If you looked at a map, that you would think that they were by how many like colonies that they had, and
how
like,
many
their
colonies,
influence.
and that their power for some time,
and having the biggest fleet and all that. Like there was a while where they were dominating, but not Atlantis, not utopian society.
Yeah, not utopian society. In fact, they're the opposite. I would say that they're the judgment of Atlantis at times.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyways.
And the nanny state.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we're going to scratch that one. I read a report, or not a report, I read a headline or something that said Francis Bacon, who may or may not have written Shakespeare's works, said that Atlantis...
Shakespeare probably should be another topic with you.
Oh, yeah, we could probably do that. But he said that Atlantis was in Brazil. And when I went back to like consolidate my notes, I could not find anything for Francis Bacon saying that it was in Brazil. So I don't even know where I heard that from. It must have been a documentary or something that I was watching.
Yeah, what a strange.
So that one's out the window.
So out the window. We'll throw that one away.
In the Disney's Atlantis, do you remember where they go to search for it?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, so there was this whole discrepancy about, it said off the coast of Ireland, and then the guy who's played by Michael J. Fox erases the R and replaces it with a C, and it changes to Iceland, which is a really cool plot device to use.
Good plot device.
It's like, oh, look, we have a mistranslation of this ancient rune on this like tablet that was found, and then he scratches it out, and it changes the whole plot. But I don't think that it is in Iceland, because it would be too far north, probably.
Definitely for the Mediterranean people groups. That's that's a long ways away.
Especially considering how much ice during the times when the planet was cooler.
Yeah.
It's probably not a great candidate for where Atlantis might be.
Which we know that they definitely wanted to planet warmer at that time because of the whole thing about Poseidon or Prometheus and fire. Fire was an important aspect. So yeah.
It was too much of like a maritime thing for it to be, and too much of a central hub. As well.
Yeah. And who's trading with Iceland even now?
Right, exactly. The Iceland probably wasn't even discovered by then. But the island of Sardinia off the coast of Italy near Sicily. You would find a lot of circumstances when you were searching for this of places that had some ruins and maybe some pottery shards or something from a previous civilization. If it had anything to do with the ocean at all, they're like, this must be Atlantis. Let's print some t-shirts and sell some tickets. And
by the gods, we have found Atlantis.
Yes,
come here, pay us. So you can use a square.
Even if it didn't match anything of Plato's description at all.
Yeah, so criteria might be important there.
Right, exactly. So let's throw away Sardinia. Okay, so there's this cool one though that people like. This guy named Edgar Casey. And there's several names associated with Atlantis that sort of get into the occult a little bit, which you can't get into legends and libations without the occult.
We have so many things that are attached to the occult. We don't know how this keeps happening. Momotaro was the maybe one thing that wasn't really that occultish.
And that's probably because we couldn't read firsthand sources on it.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
neither of us are very good with Japanese.
No, exactly. I wouldn't even know which direction to hold the paper. But this guy named Edgar Casey was like a 19th century occult practicer, and he did some channeling where he like allegedly channeled some information coming from some beings.
Can I ask?
Sure.
I've heard of channeling. I have no idea what it means.
I think channeling is, those like seance sort of things.
It's like a seance for aliens.
It's kind of like a seance, but you're going to let one person like sit at the table and be taken over by the spirit of something else.
Okay, so it's not aliens necessarily.
Not necessarily. You're going to let a spirit, like maybe like from the past or from an alien or from a demon or from some sort of other entity, ephemeral entity, like take over your body for a short time and like talk through you.
I think I'm not into this.
No, I think that you'd probably be in over your head.
Yeah. That feels
if we got into this, but he allegedly like let this happen, and he downloaded into his brain some information from something called the Akashic Records, which is interesting because like the acacia wood was what the Ark of the Covenant was made out of.
Yeah.
But the Akashic Records are allegedly like all of the knowledge of human history and like maybe human future, or just like all the knowledge of everything is in this like hall of records that doesn't exist in the real world. It's like a spiritual thing.
This reminds me of There's a movie or a show called Chuck, which is about a guy who becomes a spy because he gets this supercomputer stuck in his head.
Oh, that's
called
cool.
the Intercept, or something like that. Same concept as he has all this knowledge that he shouldn't have, and so they have to make him a spy. Sorry,
that's a great analogy to look at this because, of course, this guy he led the conversation to Atlantis. Or the beans. He asked the beans about Atlantis, and they said that it was in this place in the Bahamas called the Bimini Road. Have you seen this before?
No.
Okay, so off the coast of this island in the Bahamas, I think the island is called Bimini, and there are these structures in the water, and they look at the surface, they look pretty convincing. There's like two of them, and they're both, I would say, like a few hundred yards long, and they look like they are stone formations, like a road that's like block that's built together, and they're on like almost two parallel lines with perfect edges on each side.
Huh. Okay.
They look pretty cool. They're only, I would say, like maybe like 15 to 50 meters under the water, so they're not super deep. So you can scuba dive down there off of a boat, and you can go look at the Bimini Road. But this is not Atlantis at all. And I'll tell you why, is because the way that the rock formations can occur naturally is just like over time, the way that the waves impact the rocks and erode them is that they happen to erode them in these like straight lines, and they tend to break along like right angles. And I saw a documentary where some guy came up to the shore a few hundred yards away from this place and was like, these rocks are doing the same thing right here on the coast. In a few hundred years, like when the sea rises, you're going to be thinking that this was the next Atlantis or something like that.
I just made a very stout drink.
Nice. What are we thinking about the salty dog?
Yeah. My thoughts on the salty dog. It's super enjoyable in this weird way where I don't like. It's refreshing.
A sweet drink makes you want to drink it really fast. So since it's not a sweet drink,
it makes you want to sip on it. But it's nice to sip on.
It is nice to sip on. I enjoy it. I'm gonna take a sip right now.
Yeah, I feel like I'm entering into, like, I'm kind of starting to feel like I'm ready for an adventure. Like if you want to get a boat and look for Atlantis, I'm there.
I would totally love to do that.
If any of our subscribers would love to provide that boat adventure for us, we will go.
And for me to get scuba diving certified, because I'm definitely not scuba diving certified yet. Are you scuba diving certified, Jesse?
I No, I had the chance to do it when I lived in Belize, and then I liked spearfishing and snorkeling and stuff, but I just enjoyed that a lot more. The idea of going into crushing waters at that time was a little too offensive to me.
Absolutely. Well,
maybe now.
You could always scuba dive and go see the Bimini Road, but it's not Atlantis and it's not man-made, I don't think.
Do they know? They not even man-made?
No, I think it's just the way that the rocks eroded.
Oh,
like they just happen to like naturally form fractures on right angles, and it just makes it look like it's a real thing.
Wow.
But
that makes it confusing.
You know, it's like the thing, I think it's in Ireland or Scotland or somewhere where it has all those like hexagonal steps.
The giants.
Right,
the
exactly.
Giants, causeway.
And it just happens to be the way that the molecules, I guess, they like break down over time.
Yeah, sometimes the Earth just does really.
I love it.
Agreed.
Another one that I don't think was that has some weight to it, I would say would be Crete.
The Isle of Crete, yeah.
The Isle of Crete. Because
I just read today that they had discovered what they think is the labyrinth on Crete.
Oh, yes, the labyrinth.
Yeah, that will be for another episode.
Oh, I love, like, Crete's awesome as far as legends and stuff goes. I don't think it's Atlantis, but they're like...
But for an island we can still go to?
Yeah, Crete's one of the places where they found one of the unbreakable codes, or like the languages that they can't decipher. It's called Linear B.
Oh, yeah,
it's in this book that I read, and it makes them like an anomalous sort of like their civilization was connected to Greece in some way, but in another way they were their own thing, which they might have been there from before. They might have come from Africa or something like that. There's a lot about the past that we don't know.
Yeah, we'll do Crete one day, guys. But that's not
I think
today.
so, because the Minotaur story is really cool.
Oh, so cool.
Yes,
so
anything
cool.
with a maze is awesome.
Be a good D&D choice.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
You could throw out a ton of different places in Greece, kind of like Crete. Like there's another one called Heliki, but
I don't know Heliki.
I think it might be like a modern city that's still there. But like I said,
how could it be Atlantis if Atlantis is sunk?
Right, exactly, because that doesn't meet the number one criteria of it being swallowed up by the sea.
Yeah,
and some guy just made an argument. There was like a whole like hour-long documentary about this place, but the timing was wrong. It might have gotten hit by a tsunami at some point that came from an earthquake caused by, who knows, a volcano.
Wait, what city are you talking about?
Helike. It's like Helike, but it did not happen in the time frame that Plato made clear in his writings, which was about
I think he
9,000 years before him.
Yeah.
So that would make it about like 12,000-ish years before us.
Okay, so I did read that. And you tell me if this one you throw out.
Okay.
That there was a Santorini.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Do you know
I do want to talk
one?
about Santorini. Santorini is like the historical favorite.
Yeah, that's the historical favorite, right?
I would say that the most people who are into this, who just give it a cursory sort of investigation, would say Santorini is Atlantis. And it's because it fits some of the criteria really well.
Yeah, it's in the sea. It's in the sea near Greece.
It's in the sea near Greece. It's not past the Pillars of Hercules, though.
Yeah,
at all, unless you change their definition.
Yeah, and it's not. That was one of the issues, is it wasn't past
for sure.
Past the straits.
But Santorini is located on like a circular sort of island where there's water in the middle, and there's like island fragments around it. So it looks very visually striking and compelling to be possibly Atlantis, because you would say, oh, well, maybe it's in the middle of this, because you have the city idea of like the concentric circles. And like, if it sank, this just might be the outer circle that we still have.
Exactly. And that happened, what they say is about 3,600 years ago.
So the timing is wrong on that one as well.
But is Plato really, like, maybe his timing, you know how people said things back then, they were always kind of dramatic for the, like,
no, you're right.
If we are taking Plato, as a historian, then sure, he's wrong. But if we're taking him 9,000 years as just being a really long time ago.
No, I have a great argument for this, Jesse.
Tell me.
So when the source that Plato got was from Solon, who got it from Egypt. And the Egyptians kept time in a couple of different ways, and one was with like the lunar calendar, and one was with their solar calendar. And one would be the lunar calendar. It was in the number of like cycles of the moon, so it would be months instead of years. And so if you did 9,000 months before the time of Plato, then it would come out to be about the time where Santorini is.
Because we're talking 3,600 years ago.
Right, exactly. And I don't want to I don't think that it's Santorini, but there are some good arguments for it. And another one is that they found the remains of an old city in Santorini, like by doing excavations and stuff like that. But they didn't find any bodies. They just found like houses and streets and stuff like that.
Of a highly advanced civilization from what I've read. Yeah,
yes, absolutely. And they said that they would need, in order to establish the criteria for it to possibly be Atlantis, is that they would need to find where the port was around Santorini.
Yeah.
And that's because when they discovered the ruins of Pompeii and the other place that was destroyed around the time of Pompeii, whose name I cannot think of right now, but
I know Pompeii. My
wife would know it. There were like two places that were destroyed, and the part of the evidence that they used to establish like the narrative of Pompeii is that they found the port city was full of bodies, and it was because when the I don't know if it was like a tidal wave or it was the volcano and the lava, stuff like that. People were trying to get to the port. It would be like the parking lot right now or like the bus stop or whatever. Yeah. Like they were trying to get to the port and get on a ship as soon as possible. And that's where a lot of them perished. So if they were able to find the port in Santorini from like prehistory, antiquity, and it was like littered with bodies and stuff like that, that would show that they died during a cataclysm.
Yeah, which of course it is said that it was a volcanic eruption, so a lot like
there was definitely like that's indisputable. There was the volcanic eruption. Yeah. It's just whether or not it was Atlantis or not.
One of the things that land, Italy, Greece, is so full of like earthquakes. It's just
why is that? I wonder if it's like on a fault line.
Yeah, it must be on a fault line, and because I mean, like literally one of Poseidon's epithets is
the earthquakes.
Earthshaker.
He's the god of earthquake,
which I always thought was weird because he's like the god of the sea. But maybe it's because every earthquake then brings on a
tsunami. Absolutely.
So
I can give you some more evidence for Santorini.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Well, and it's one that would not be apparent to you because Plato never mentions a volcano.
Never.
At all. He says that it was swallowed up by the sea in a single day and night.
Yeah.
But if there was an earthquake that erupted with a certain amount of force that spewed smoke and ash into the air, that from a distance, you would not be able to see what was happening to it.
And it's not like Plato was actually there. So he's
writing from an account himself
of an oral story or song.
So if the person just witnessed it from afar, they wouldn't necessarily know that it was a volcano.
Especially if they're like that. I'm thinking of like the bard class that you kind of see in the Odyssey. I'm reading that with some students right now. And the bard is always focused on, but if the bard sees or hears a story, he's allowed to add on to that as much as he sees fit.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, protector of history, right?
And I said Plato's kind of like a bard too.
Oh, definitely.
In this context especially.
Yeah, definitely passing on the story to us.
But reasons that Santorini would not be Atlantis. Not past the Pillars of Hercules. That's the number one.
That's number one.
The timing is wrong unless you have an error with the dates.
Yep. Possible.
And the biggest one, I think, is that Santorini was not the hub of anything. It was part of Crete's sphere of influence. So if there was a nation that they belonged to or whatever, it would be part of the Crete city state sort of thing.
Yeah. So if I could, this is where I think I want to bring in that. There's two ways that we could kind of talk about this. Is first, Plato's wrong, or that Plato is using this song about Atlantis that he heard from some bard, some poet, and adding his own twist on it. If I could suggest that there's some sense that Plato is known for writing the Republic,
right,
which is his idea of the perfect civilization. Not strangely, but very really, it makes sense.
Not a historian.
No, he's not a historian.
He's not Herodotus.
No. But he also, if I may, his republic reflects Atlantean society very well.
He puts them on a pedestal.
He puts them on a pedestal. Their land is good. It creates so much, but also their people are good. originally this kind of divine nature of the people, and he connects it to their divine nature, them being connected with the gods, with Poseidon.
So they're like a model society.
They're a model society, and he creates quite a thing
until a certain point.
Absolutely.
Which we should talk about.
Yeah, which we will kind of come to. It was in his detail. The people were divided into 60,000 lots, and each lot was led by a great like military hero of some sort.
So the 60,000 lot that's their land allotment.
It's like I think it was for status or something. I don't know.
Okay,
I forget exactly. And the leader had to provide certain things for the overarching like army. For Atlantis, if anything went down.
So you're talking about their military,
not just their military. They had to provide for, which is I read 10 charioteers, so many spearmen, just a random. I don't know if it was random, but that leader would have control over that territory or area, unless something bigger happened. Mm-hmm. And there was also like during times of like conflict, the head of the house of Atlas would have final authority as long as he got the votes of the majority of the 10 to choose for him.
So they had a very well-organized society for existing.
They had
almost 10,000 years before Plato's time.
Yeah, exactly. A very well.
This is very early on in the establishment of civilization.
And big.
As far as our way
these
of
aren't little
goes.
Tribes. This is like a huge.
This is in a time where the historical consensus is that most civilizations were probably like hunter-gatherer sort of type people.
Yeah.
10,000 years before Plato.
Yeah. And one of the things that would happen is like during times of like they had rules where they couldn't go to war with each other. Like
that's a great rule.
Yeah. No one on the Isle of Atlantis could go to war with each other, and if anyone teamed against the High King, the others would have to come to his aid. Well, that's a very good way of creating a civilization.
I mean, it has some holes in it, but it definitely protects the hierarchy of things. And puts your country first, but not in a egotistical way, like a nationalistic sort of way. Is more of like in a healthy checks and balances. It's not perfect, but it's still like we're a team because we have our values.
It's like his republic. Mm-hmm. It so much matches. So there's little things that match his republic that I'm like,
I like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And there was votes, like the head of each household had kind of their vote, and as long as the majority was there, so you have a little bit of democracy, then they could go forth with it. The supreme ruler, the High King.
I mean, let's be straight. Like, not everyone currently should probably be allowed to vote anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I was reading something that was talking
I'm not going to elaborate on that, but...
Yeah. We don't need to elaborate on that.
Exactly.
But one of the things, like, even in, like, these times of crisis, these, like, leaders would come in power that were from the line of Atlas. So they had to be the High King's household.
Right. That keeps you from being susceptible to being taken over by outside forces.
Yeah. But then the moment the danger was gone, he had to let each power assume their own normal power again, which was
not what Caesar did.
Yeah, not what Caesar did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we see the Republic. We see Rome here. We see early Rome.
Right. We see like a blueprint for it.
Yeah. We see Athens. Like we see.
I mean, let's be honest. Rome stole a lot of things from ancient Greece.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and this idea doesn't quit. I'm thinking of like Renaissance writers, like or English Renaissance writers, like St. Thomas More, who wrote Utopia when he was writing about the New World.
Where was he from?
He was from England.
Okay.
England loves copying Rome, and Rome loves copying Greece,
absolutely.
and Greece loves copying Plato.
Right.
So there we are.
It all circles back.
Yeah. And so this idea of creating utopias. So my idea is that he's using a common already story and mythos of Atlantis that exist already in the normal mindset of the people of Athens. And he's like, hey, this city, this is how it was. And he attaches his republic to it so that we don't need to take Plato extremely serious with all his like moves and rules to what Atlantis was like, but rather that he heard the story of Atlantis and then he attached his own republic to it.
Right. Because that was ultimately his goal, was
to
get
make
across
to make a better
his
civilization.
republic.
Yeah, exactly.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that he made up the entire continent of Atlantis.
Exactly. Because here he wrote the Republic was a thing, but then if he creates a story about Atlantis, then that also connects him to history. That connects him to an ancient tradition of noble and good people. And these people are good. And when they become morally corrupt, what does he do but attach it to a judgment of the gods?
Judgment happens to them. Yes, exactly. Because according to the story, the Atlanteans, their hubris caused the wrath of the gods to come down on them, and they were swallowed up by the sea in a single day and night.
Yeah. Well, and what did they do? Before they were called gentle-hearted, wise.
So they had it going right for a while.
Yeah. And he connects that to their divine blood, which is interesting. I'm not sure.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. And he would even talk about their sacrificial system. I thought their sacrificial system was interesting.
What was that? I don't know anything about that.
Well, whenever the council came together, they came together every 5 and 6 years. 5 years to give the odd number some devotion, and 6 to recognize the even number.
So did you have just like years 1 through 4, nothing happened, and then 5 and 6 we happened back to back?
Yeah, but then you do another 5 and 6,
and then it would offset a little bit more. As time went by, it kind of got.
So the council would meet together, and if anyone had qualms with one another, they'd bring it up.
I love the word qualms.
Yeah, they'd bring it up, and then they would make a vote.
Okay.
And at that night, they would have to go and look for a bull, a cow, a male cow, and they would have to hunt for it with just ropes and spears. And they would have to pull it back to the pillar. So in the middle of the temple, there was a pillar with the commandments of Poseidon, but it also had the curses of Poseidon.
Do we know commandments of Poseidon or curses of Poseidon?
I didn't know. Plato doesn't write them.
Plato doesn't know those. But that's still like a lot of detail for a place that may not be real.
Yeah. He wrote, obviously, the virtue was the commandment of some way, and the curses were if those don't follow virtue. And
they got away from these at some point.
Yeah. And so they would take the bull and bring it up and sacrifice it and put its blood on the pillar.
Right.
And then they would go and enact judgment the next day.
Wow.
And so that creates this kind of like them as a council deciding things, and then going and
there being repercussions for the actions.
But later, within generations and generations, it says, they're doing all these great things, but eventually they become morally corrupt. So what happens is the gods are like, what the hell? You guys are making a mess of things. And they have a council. The gods have a council. You never like when the gods make a council. No. Definitely if they're looking at human affairs and they're like, what the heck are you guys doing?
It's like human affairs, those aren't even their own affairs.
Yeah.
They're more concerned with themselves. If the humans are acting up, then you know something must be wrong.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing I was reading about, is like whenever the gods were, giving different parts of the earth to different people groups, they also were making sure that there was temples built for them. Absolutely. And people were giving honor to them. And again, like I said, I was with one of my classes, we're going over the Odyssey. And what's weird is that Hermes in the Odyssey tells Calypso, you live far off on this island in the middle of nowhere. Us gods, us Olympians, like building our temples where we can be worshipped, and like people can offer libations to us. And,
libations.
Yeah, I find that an interesting space that the ancient gods want. They want people to.
They want to be worshipped.
Like for a god to be concerned with you. It's not like now where we have this personal god who's like wants to be in connection with you. It's like the god's like, yeah, prove yourself. Why would I pay attention?
It's all about them first.
Yeah. Like, let me find you worthy.
Right.
And so that's an interesting little thing here too. I don't know what to do with that.
Well, we see that with like the destruction of Atlantis is because the gods eventually decided that they needed to be reprimanded.
Because these people went from
perfect society.
And even in this kind of capitalistic way, it says goods were increased. This is what Plato says. Goods were increased by virtue and friendship with one another.
What does that mean?
Well, in Atlantis, when they were good to each other, like they didn't care about gold and stuff, but nonetheless, whenever they were good to each other and cared about virtue, goods continued to grow.
Right.
So it was almost
it crept in a little bit.
Yeah,
and it started to get out of control.
Well, yeah, and so as people, rather than their aim being virtue and friendship, their aim became
to get the money from being
gold,
virtue, and friendship.
Exactly, and so that corrupted it, and so they went
it's
from
not hard to see that coming.
No, that's not hard at all. I'm sure. Yeah, that's not a hard one to see.
And so the gods brought down their wrath upon Atlantis, and it was destroyed.
They behaved unseemly. And so they were destroyed. It's very much like a Noah's Ark kind of situation, right? A flood.
Right, exactly.
But rather than for the whole of the world, it's for this like
okay, and so
populace.
the flood, I'm glad that you mentioned the flood, Jesse, because the flood is one of those universal things that you hear about in cultures all over the world.
Yeah,
not just in Christianity, but in like Native American societies.
Yeah, you got the turtle that they have to float on to survive. You have the Epic
African,
of Gilgamesh.
Yes, Sumerians.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this flood, it seems like there's too many accounts of it for it not to have been a real thing.
Yeah,
right?
like something something flooded the world.
Right, exactly.
A lot of water suddenly happened. Tell me about that.
And one of my favorite ways to explain this universal flood myth that tends to pop up so often is it's called the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis.
That sounds like a big name. Go ahead and hash that out for me.
So about 12,800 years ago, you had so we were warming as a planet, and the impact hypothesis is that a comet or an asteroid or something impacted with the Earth and caused a massive explosion that caused like a dust cloud of ash that blocked out the sun and created an ice age.
Okay.
But this is this is more recent than the ice age of like millions of years ago that you think of when you think of like...
This is like a minor ice age.
This is like an ice age that happened during a time when humans were. For sure.
Yeah.
And this ice age lasted for a few thousand years, a couple thousand years, until one of my favorite researchers, I've mentioned him before, Graham Hancock, believes that there's this like meteor shower that comes around the Earth, probably like annually, I think. I can't remember what it's called, but every so often we drift towards the center of this meteor shower, like our solar system does, or the meteor shower does, and we get closer to the bigger debris of it, or like the bigger parts of it.
That sucks. It's like getting punched by Zeus.
Exactly. And so his theory is that what started the ice age that happened with the impact also was what ended it. So after a few thousand years of cold weather, that another large space object collided with the ice sheet over North America, possibly, and created a massive release of fresh water that was all locked up in the ice. And that caused the sea levels to rise a lot.
Interesting.
Over 200 feet, probably. Like globally, you had 200 feet rise in sea levels, which caused massive amounts of coastal cities everywhere to be swallowed up by the sea.
And of course, if we're thinking of those civilizations that have mentioned a flood, all of them are close to the sea.
Exactly. And if you think about the key points of Atlantis, about it being like a port city and it having these concentric circle islands, that it would be massively susceptible to flooding.
Flood damage. Yeah.
Exactly.
I hope they had insurance.
And don't get me started on insurance. But you see, like that's another reason to believe that cities could have gotten swallowed up by the seas, because you had this massive rise in sea levels. And like this is not something that we were taught in school when we were growing up, but it's starting to become a scientific consensus in the academic community, is that like our children will learn about there being a impact that caused the sea levels to rise, or something that caused the sea levels to rise.
Interesting.
It's like how we have erosion patterns on the Sphinx in Egypt from something that couldn't possibly not have been anything else except for seawater, and that you have sunken cities off the coasts of places like Indonesia, like I mentioned earlier, India as well, on the eastern coast of India.
How fascinating.
Exactly.
Wow.
So there's precedent for this massive sea level rise around the exact time period where Plato said that Atlantis vanished.
Holy smokes. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes, this is one of my favorite things. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is something that, if you're interested in this sort of thing, that you should look it up because it's going to blow your mind and it's going to answer a lot of questions and open up a lot of doors for those like fascinating historical mysteries that you've heard of or wondered about.
All right. Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that.
And okay, so there are a lot of different possibilities for Atlantis that I really do enjoy. And coming back to that impact hypothesis that I just mentioned, is that one of them is the Azores Islands.
Tell me a little bit more about the Azores Islands.
So they fit a lot of the criteria for Plato's description of Atlantis.
Where are the Azores
Islands?
The
Azores Islands are off the coast of Spain and Morocco.
Oh my God! It's so close to where exactly we would think about
right.
it. Yeah.
And it's some of the only islands that you have in the Atlantic between like us in the United States and like mainland Europe.
It is always interesting that the Pacific has so many more islands.
The Pacific does have a lot of islands.
And then you get us and we're just like,
we've got
and then we're like
Bermuda and Aruba on our side, and then there's like nothing for several thousand miles. And then you've got Azores and Canary Islands.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it.
Yep.
And then you hit the Straits of Gibraltar, which is what the Pillars of Hercules were.
I like that you used the traditional name Heracles. Do you know how he got that name?
No, I have no idea. How do we get that name?
Heracles rather than Hercules. Hercules is our Disney or Latin version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Heracles. So it comes from Greek.
Okay.
It is the 12 trials of Hercules. Heracles come from Hera, Juno in Latin, and Hera challenges him. Mm-hmm. Not in a Disney way where she's not involved, but she's the one who's kind of she's the Hades of the actual story. Okay. She doesn't like him, and there's
he's not her kid.
Yeah, exactly. That's Zeus's other kid. Always Zeus's other kid.
Mm-hmm.
Gods are wild and untamed, my friends.
Have a sitcom, Zeus's other kid.
Yeah, and so Percy Jackson? Not just kidding.
No, I'm not familiar with the Percy Jackson, but the Azores fit a lot of the criteria besides being past the Pillars of Heracles, and one of those is that they do have the hot and cold springs. They do have colored stones of red, white, and black, and you see some research or some like debunking people who go along. They're like, oh, okay, well, we haven't found evidence on the Azores that there was a civilization X amount of years ago to prove that it was Atlantis.
Yeah.
But that is because, though, like if it was, then these would be like the peaks of their mountains. These wouldn't be like the mainland where people were leaving.
If we remember from even Plato's work, they're in the plains.
Right. Yes. Atlantis is in the plains. It's not in the mountains at all.
Yeah. There's mountains there.
There are mountains, but that doesn't mean that people moved there during the time of Atlantis. Like, if they're living on the Azores Islands now, which are the mountain peaks, then they would be completely separate civilization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I like the Azores, and one of the leading scientific people to do with geography and geology changes over time right now. Sorry, I'm fumbling over my words because I don't know these scientific words, but his name is Randall Carlson. He's friends with Graham Hancock.
You can always blame it on the gin.
Yes, I'll blame it on the gin. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a few times. He did a really interesting thing on like how the scablands were formed, I think in like Washington State and up there after the Ice Age. But it's his favorite theory that the Azores fit the mold for being Atlantis better than anywhere else. And you have to give him some credit because it fits a lot of the criteria. A lot of these other places on the list don't even come close.
Yeah.
So if I were to pick like a historical favorite or like to take the place of Santorini, I would probably say the Azores are a good one.
Yeah, the Azores seem like they're a very logical choice. It's a very logical choice.
Exactly.
So here is the question. So my guess is that there's a true myth, there's a true space that is Atlantis, which again, both Atlas named from Atlantis, or sorry, from Atlas, Jin, is both the Atlantic Ocean and Atlantis come from that.
Right.
So from Plato's mythos, that he obviously, I think he obviously adds the Republic onto it, a mythos that already exists.
Right.
What other spaces could this be?
Let me go back to what you were saying about adding the Republic onto it, is that there was this guy, I want to say 1880s, maybe like to 1910s or something like that. He was an American politician. His name was Ignatius Donnelly. You'll find this name a lot if you Google Atlantis. Is that he wrote a book called The Antediluvian World, and I think antediluvian means before the flood. And he liked to use Atlantis as an allegory for a utopian society that he wanted America to model itself after. And it's
so normal.
Exactly.
Yeah, we already talked about this utopian idea.
Right. He's standing on the shoulders of Plato and others that came before him.
Plato, St. Thomas More. I mean, we love creating a civilization.
Exactly. And this is over in the New World in America doing the same thing.
Well, and the New World was what? The new opportunity to create civilization.
Right.
As if we failed in Europe, and so we have to recreate it here.
And some would say we did it better than others, but Ignatius Donnelly, he wrote that book, and in the book, I think he attaches the Azores to being his favorite example of it as well. Mm-hmm. But if we go along with some other theories that I personally like a lot, and this one is not one that is going to be widely accepted or like I think is even true, but Antarctica.
Oh, okay. So
let me give you a good out there theory for Antarctica.
So here's our out there theory.
Out there theory.
Not positive we believe it, but we like it.
No,
okay?
it's a fun one. We should have like a sound effect or something for when we do out there theories. But okay, going only by the sentence that Plato gives you about the Atlantis being swallowed up by the sea in a single day and night. Mm-hmm. What if something caused like a continental plate tectonic shift and Atlantis shifted laterally or like latitude wise
thousands of miles
down thousands of miles, the Earth's crust moved and it became into freezing territory, and being swallowed by the sea meant that ice formed over the entire civilization over a single day and night.
I feel like the poles of north and south switched on us. It used to be east and west, and now switched.
Okay, I like that you said that, because I come across this thing called the pole shift a lot of the times when I'm like researching conspiracy stuff or I'm listening to conspiracy podcasts, and I don't exactly know what they mean when they're talking about the pole shifting, because you have like a true north and south, and then you have magnetic north and south, which are a little bit off.
I didn't know they were a little bit off.
Yeah, they're a little bit off from where true north and south are. And so is that what is shifting? Or are they flipping entirely? Or are the east and the west taking the place of the north and the south? Or what? I would love a little more clarity on what it means by this pole shift.
Okay, nerds, write us.
Yes, someone who is more well-versed in made-up geological anomalies.
Yes, please.
No, but the pole shift is used to describe a lot of things when it comes to like conspiratorial stuff like Atlantis or things that will happen in the future that will like knock out like modern day communications. And yeah, exactly. Like a what do you call that? Not a Tunguska event, but this was the 1800s thing that like knocked out all of the power lines at the time, and if it happened today, it would like completely cripple the entire infrastructure.
Not sure we're ready for that.
Yeah, we're definitely not ready for that. But Antarctica is cool, and this guy named Charles Hapgood, he came up with this idea. It was not my idea. I actually came up with this idea, and then I read that he had the same idea. So
you were like, damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody stole my idea.
Make of it what you will. Some good arguments, though, for Antarctica being more than meets the eye than like the frozen world that we see now is that you may have heard of this thing called the Piri-Reis map. It was this map.
I've heard of it.
The Piri-Reis map is very important. It forms the basis for a lot of theories of things that happened before our modern history. And it shows Antarctica with an ice-free coastline. And it has like the land marked out accurately where it would be if there was no ice on Antarctica. And it's like,
fascinating.
How did they know where the land was going to be underneath the ice if it wasn't covered by ice during the times when the map was made? I don't know. Yeah. And like the main debunking thing on this is that like it was made from previous sources, and that there was just like, I don't know, errors in translation from translation, like the game of telephone that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But the Piri Reis map is pretty cool, and I recommend you looking up more if that interests you.
Yeah, check out the map if you like old maps at all.
Oh yes, definitely.
It's always a fun.
We'll come back to old maps in a minute. Another one that I like that's probably not Atlantis is this thing that I learned about when researching this that I never heard of before. It's called Doggerland. Doggerland, I think. Have you heard of this before?
Nope.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
All right. So in the North Sea, this is like between Britain and like Belgium and Germany and the Netherlands and stuff like that. Is that the sea's not very deep right there, apparently. It's only like a couple of 100 meters deep, I think. And they find pottery shards and other remnants of civilization whenever they go fishing. They put nets out and they cast lines out. They bring up these human, like, obvious evidence of.
Could you imagine pulling up a human skull?
Yeah, I think that was some of the things they did bring up humans.
Oh my god!
And so it turns out that there was this whole like land mass that was between Britain and like Germany that's called Doggerland. I don't know if it was called that at the time, but
yeah,
probably not. They didn't probably call it that at all. But it got covered when the sea levels rose, and it was like a whole civilization at one point. But I don't think that it was long enough ago to be what Plato described as being Atlantis.
Again, but we could argue that that's not as long ago as he says.
Right, exactly.
9,000 years ago, like what we have history from maybe 6,000 years.
You don't even trust somebody when they say like 2 weeks ago or whatever. You know that they're already rounding up whenever you give an account of something that happened before.
Yeah. So I think we just gotta assume that Plato's rounding up.
Right, exactly. Or rounding whichever way.
We know
ways.
Plato's smart and everything, but I think he rounds up.
Mm-hmm. You got to give some like leadway when it comes to concrete numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, like those biblical things where they're like, so and so was 900 years old, and you're like, are you sure?
Or the earth, the sun, the sun rose and the sun set between every single thing that God did during the first 6 days of creation.
Yeah, right.
Like, there's tons of interpretation for that right there.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we need to be a little bit more
generous.
We need to talk about, we need to be more generous and be like, let's listen to what they're talking
numbers
about.
Numbers are hard.
And not their numbers.
Right,
because their
exactly.
numbers are crazy.
Like, we can't, your average person can't even do like 4th grade math nowadays. And you expect us to come up with an accurate way of measuring the time in the day. Like, how did everyone in the world even get on the same agreement of what time was and what the years were?
Yeah, the calendar wasn't like made until Rome.
Okay.
And I mean, of course, they had like lunar calendars and whatnot, but like those are different.
You listening at home right now, if you were in ancient times and there was no electricity and there was no computers, how much time would have to pass for you to be able to learn that the moon went in cycles?
Also, sorry you wouldn't be listening to this podcast because you'd be at home listening to songs or stories around a fire, and it wouldn't be legends and libations.
I'm just saying that I don't know if I would notice that the moon went in cycles for a long time.
Anyways.
Okay, so let's get into like a couple more of the serious ones for possibilities of where Atlantis might be. And I've got a pretty convincing one that is hidden under the guise of we can't do excavation there because it would be too difficult to do.
Okay, so that sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what?
Okay, so there was this ancient civilization that's mentioned in the Bible. It's called Tarshish.
Yeah,
you might have heard of it.
Yeah, I recall it.
Okay, and its other name might have been Tartessos. And it is right past the Strait of Gibraltar. If you turn right, it's in Spain.
Go out the strait.
Yep.
Turn right.
Out the strait, turn to the right. You see the mud flats, and you're in Tartessos, which may be...
Is that connected to Tartarus, like hell?
I don't know.
Okay. That's okay.
Possibly, but that might be a conversation for another time. But this place, it's like mud flats, so it's hard to do excavation there, but it's in this like national park place. It's like a big open plain.
Do you remember the mud flats in Alaska around the Anchorage?
Around Homer? Or around driving Anchorage. Out of Anchorage?
Yeah.
Was that the result of
it? It was the bay around Anchorage, and like, yeah, it looks like something you can walk on, but you can't because you'll sink.
That's I do remember that because the tides.
The tides.
Yeah, the tides were crazy in Alaska.
I loved it.
It was very interesting how the way of life was like revolved around the tides.
Yeah, we don't think about that at all.
No, we don't have anything like that at all.
We have tides. I mean, like when I think about like on the Gulf Coast, we have tides. If we go down there, but like it
doesn't impact your entire business
unless you fish.
Yeah,
that's the only way it impacts you is if you're going fishing. But like back in the day, that would have impacted you.
Oh yeah,
a lot.
exactly.
Yeah.
And imagine how long it would take before you were like, oh, the moon and the tides, and how do these correlate to each other? That's crazy.
When your civilization found that out, you started doing math
and started planting crops.
Yep.
And having elections.
I love crops.
Indeed. Cash crops. All right. So Tartessos in Spain could have possibly been Atlantis because they did some surveys with ground penetrating radar and electrical resistive topography.
That reminds me of Godzilla from 2000, where they were electrocuting the ground.
Oh,
and
really?
Worms are coming out of it.
Wow.
Sorry.
I did not see that, but you're going to get me off on
something
in a second.
Let's not go to that.
Yeah, because I could talk about stuff like that for all day. But okay, so that's basically they like shoot electricity into the ground and they like measure it coming back, and it shows which kind of like the composition of the rocks that it strikes off of and stuff like that.
And they're not trying to get worms with that electricity.
No, they're not trying to get worms with electricity.
That's very different than Godzilla.
That's a good idea though, to get worms.
Yeah.
So they took some like aerial photography and with the ground penetrating radar and stuff like that, and they showed that there's kind of like a circular, like concentric circles formation in this mudflats place in Spain. It's pretty neat. I like it a lot. And a couple of 1,000 yards away, I want to say that there is a temple dedicated to an unknown civilization that they found that has like gold, silver, pottery, other stuff that Atlantis was known for having.
I'm surprised with gold and silver they haven't already learned to mine it, because
exactly
our civilization loves that stuff.
Indeed, we do. And like, I guess like a couple of debunking things about this place, the Tartessos in Spain, is that it's not an island. Like, I don't even know if Plato even says that Atlantis was an island nation itself.
It seems like a continent of some sort, or and it's hard to tell because there's so much on it. But again, Plato may be adding so much to a theory that is already, or a legend that's already out there. It's crazy because we're like,
and the geography could be different already at the time.
Yeah, because we're like legend inception right now. We're talking about a legend that was already a legend. That was already a legend.
Yes.
Guys, this is like threefold legend right now. Somebody told it to one guy who eventually got to Plato, and Plato wrote it to us. This is like a super legend.
Was like he was doing Legends and Libations himself at the time.
Yeah, and he was like, hey, this is how the civilization
was.
Down. And then he added the Republic.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I need an allegory for something.
Here's a badass civilization. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I like them. I admired them.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you do that? We do it to Rome all the time now.
Exactly. I'm going to immortalize them in my writings forever.
They were the original Roman Republic.
Did Plato know that he was famous in his time? Or was he like a Van Gogh type person where it was like down on his luck when he was actually alive?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think, because so some of his later students, like Aristotle, became very famous. I don't think Plato knew that he would still be talking about, like, we'd still be
talking about him right now.
Yeah, but here we are. Like,
if he knew that, would he be like, I'm going to be a little more serious about some things and like a little more specific about other things?
Yeah, I do wonder, because here we are literally 24,000 years later. We're like 100, not 1,000.
Not 1,000.
2,400 years later, talking about Plato, and we're like, hey,
we'll be talking about him probably 23,000 if we're still here.
Yeah. If we're still here, Plato's going to continue, and he actually did what all the Greek heroes wanted to do, where they wanted to immortalize themselves through legend. He absolutely did it.
He did that.
Yeah,
yes.
He did it. Plato is immortalized in the Greek world. He's immortal.
That's true. That's impressive too, especially when you have like his teacher being Socrates and his student being Aristotle. Like, that's a dynasty right there.
Yeah, that's a dynasty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't just get away from that, right?
All right, Jesse, do you have anything to add before I get to what I think is the coup de grace of Atlantis theories? And I don't even know if I said that right. Oh, I've got one more thing. I'm going to say some crazy stuff for a second.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about crazy stuff for a second.
All right, let's talk about crazy stuff for a second. You may have heard of a Russian mystic named...
I'm already in the you said Russian mystic and I can't handle it.
All right.
Okay, good. Russian
This
mystic.
goes back to our occult stuff, and I'm just looking through my notes and saying, okay, what did I miss and what do I have to mention? Because she comes up in every single conspiracy or occult or...
Guys, we don't know why everything comes to the occult.
But
everything does. But the occult loves everything. They just want to grab on anything they can.
And this is probably an unfair comparison, but this is like the female version of Aleister Crowley. And her name is Helena Blavatsky.
Okay, tell me about her.
I don't know a lot about her specifically, but she founded something called the Theosophist Society, which is talked about today and has something to do with Aleister Crowley for sure. He might have joined it. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But she lived in like the 1800s, early 1900s.
Spiritualism is so crazy in the 1900s. It's unhinged.
Right.
It's unhinged.
It is unhinged.
Like spirituality, they're looking for anything and everything. And oh my God, this is where things like Ouija boards come from. They just unhinged and looking for, they're mixing all spiritualities.
I saw a really interesting thing about this, Jesse, that you'd probably find interesting as well, is that, I can't remember what I was watching that said this, but okay, there was like a time in history around this early 1900s, late 1800s time where we had the Industrial Revolution and we split, or we didn't split, but the power of like fossil fuels and like steam power and internal combustion engine and stuff like that just like came on the scene and just like dominated all of our power sort of needs.
Yeah.
And if that had not happened, that we would have been pursuing a much more philosophical, occult, sort of like ethereal energy and like out there sort of
100%, because all of a sudden the world's becoming bigger and they're just throwing spiritualities and ideas together.
Right.
Like that is the direction we're headed at that moment before the fossil fuels.
And exactly. You have the internal combustion engine, you have diesel fuel, and you have all these things come on the scene and they just like completely take over. And you see that just like plow ahead for the next century plus. And that's what like leads to where we are today. And so we kind of got away from that whole like energy sort of thing that includes like dowsing rods and stuff like that. And like mediums and crystals and like all kinds of other like crazy sort of like out there things that were being explored at the time.
Yeah, though I think there's a weird rise in those lately.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Definitely crystals.
Yeah. Definitely crystals.
So I hear about crystals every day.
Thanks, Jesse. So we're gonna get one more top up. Jesse, do you need another drink?
No, I'm on my third.
Okay, so Jesse's doing good, but I'm gonna give you guys my favorite Atlantis potentiality in just a second, because like, okay, so I'll tell you about Helena Blavatsky for a second, is that she had this whole thing about the Atlanteans being the fourth of the 7 human root races that existed, and that it was hundreds of millions of years ago, and that they were at war with this other continent that is also lost to history called Lemuria. And Lemuria exists supposedly off the coast of...
This straight feels like it comes out of like 1800s.
It sounds like I'm making all this up as I'm going. But
you're a science fiction writer.
Yeah, I'm like H.P. Lovecraft.
right
now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they found skeletons of lemurs from Madagascar and in India as well. So this one guy said that, if we're going to find remnants of lemurs in both of these places that are disconnected by an ocean right now, that there must have been a landmass in between.
They must have been connected.
Right,
so that there's like connected. A huge supercontinent
so there's a supercontinent that exists
around
in the Indian
Madagascar?
Ocean. Yes, off the coast of Madagascar, or potentially part of Madagascar, called Lemuria. Which
is that named after the lemurs?
Absolutely named after the lemurs.
Holy smoke. I hope that could you imagine? We are Lemuria, lemur country.
Lemur country, exactly. But maybe they didn't know that they were lemur country. Maybe that's us looking in retrospect at it from a modern perspective.
Please let them be lemur country.
But I would like to imagine them having lemurs on their flags. And
jumping from star to star to freedom.
So... And the thing is that like people like Helena Blavatsky can say that this stuff happened millions of years ago,
and who could challenge it?
Because you can't even challenge it at all. Like it's just like, okay, whatever. Okay, this happened and we're gonna go with it. Yeah. So apparently Lemuria, this is all coming back around. Lemuria was its own advanced society, but they were spirituality advanced. They were like in tune with the beyond, and
we're thinking like high Buddhist culture, high like medieval Catholic culture.
Absolutely. And Atlantis was their counterpart or their analog. Mm-hmm. And they were a technologically advanced society with their crystals and their power generating machines and their advanced society.
Whenever the hurricane hit.
So you had the technologically advanced society and the spirituality advanced society clashing in a battle of the Titan continents against each other, like a modern America and China fighting each other in like a global war.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
And so due to their own hubris or each other destroying each other sort of thing, like the continents both sank. And that's how we eliminated the world of both Atlantis, and Lemuria.
How does she justify the sinking of the other country that we've never heard about?
I have no idea because
maybe she didn't worry about it. Maybe she was like, I've explained Atlantis. You explain Lemuria.
I bet that it is probably in some of her writings because she had followers and people who subscribed to her belief system and co-founded her society and stuff like that with her. Like it was a big deal for some reason.
Yeah, I mean that's how cults are, right?
Yeah, it took hold in the mind. Like this Edgar Casey guy, I'm pretty sure that he had something to do with it as well, or like he was like a subscriber to it. And like like once one person says that they believe in it, then like the next person can use that as justification for it, and like after a while you have a whole belief system that's built.
Isn't that how it goes? If you say someone very like well recognized says something, then you're like the moment I recall back in the day, like theology arguments that somebody would be like, C.S. Lewis said ... and you're like, oh, just because someone like C.S. Lewis says that, then like all of a sudden everyone's like, hell yeah, I believe in that.
But C.S. Lewis is one that if he says it, I'd probably like it.
Yeah, well,
for the most part,
it was freaking brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he had a way with words.
Oh, so good with words. So
good with words.
But like like the argument of so and so said it isn't really enough, right?
No, not at all, because you have to have evidence for them. Like you can't just like base it on a source of not a source. Like it's not a first-hand source, so
exactly.
You have to have some sort of substantiating evidence to claim that it's true and prove it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
hey, just a side note, it's different without the salt, isn't it?
It is, because I didn't...
Guys, a salty dog is only good with the salt.
With the salt, if you don't have the salt...
You need the salt of Atlantis upon the rim.
To counteract the grapefruit.
The grapefruit. And the gin, that juniper is coming out. Like, the juniper is like, hello, here I am. And grapefruit's like,
did you miss
hello,
me?
Here I am. Yeah, exactly. And so the salt somehow tames it. It suggests to it, hey, calm down. Don't be so crazy.
It's hard to get like an even balance of the salt on the rim.
Yeah, because if it's too much, it's just salty. Have you ever had that friend that like you invite to like a party and you're like, they're embarrassing unless you kind of like are the salt?
Wait, I'm that friend, Jesse. What are you talking about? All right, so I had to get Helena Blavatsky out there, or Madame Blavatsky, as you might hear her referred to as.
Depends on if you're part of the cult or not.
Right. She's under my heading in my notes called Figures of Dubious Importance.
You know, dubious food from like Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda. Mm-hmm. Not so good.
No, not at all.
Love the word dubious.
I do love the word dubious too. But, okay, so I wanted to get her out of the way.
Thank you for throwing her out of the way.
Before I get to, I think it might be my favorite of the Atlantis locations.
So is this like our we might finalize.
I don't know if we endorse this one we unilaterally across the board for Legends and Libations, but I would say that it holds a lot of weight here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, this is called the Rishot structure.
Ooh, okay.
Have you heard of this before?
This sounds like one of those weird like structures that people tell me to remodel my life, but I don't.
All right, so it's RICHIT or AT, RICHAT, the Richat structure, is in the country of Mauritania. And if you don't know where
That's a real country?
Mauritania is in the Sahara Desert in Africa.
No, that's from Lord of the Rings, man.
It does sound like it's from Lord of the Rings, like Middle Earth. And it's near the middle of the planet as far as like latitude goes. Okay. So in the Sahara Desert, sort of toward like the western side of Africa.
Oh, I heard about this.
Yes. You have the Sahara Desert and you have this thing that's labeled as the Eye of the Sahara. Mm-hmm. So if you Google image it, everyone, I encourage you to go
to Google
and search the Richat structure, RICHAT. And it looks like concentric circles in the desert surrounded by sand, but in a valley that is unmistakably the shape of an eyelid. And it's called the Eye of the Sahara. And it is perfect circles, one within another. You would not be able to deny that this structure is like magnificently formed. And if it was not naturally created, that it has to hold some kind of significance in human history.
Seriously?
Yes, dude. You should go look at it. It's like pretty breathtaking thing. Like this is when we need a video podcast right now,
which we're going to start in the next couple months, guys. Yeah, so be ready for a video podcast.
Yeah, we're going to be bringing a video podcast to you so you can see what we look like, unfortunately, and you can see some visual aids, such as the Richat structure, which we will put in the show notes for this episode. Yeah. But this thing is amazing, and so one of the surprising things about the Richat structure is that it's not one of like the amazing wonders of the world that you would hear about normally as far as things go. Like
you hear about like the gardens of Babylon.
Yeah, like the gardens of Babylon, the Great Pyramids and things like that. Like even if this wasn't man-made, even if it's a natural formation, it is a mind-boggling thing.
I can't believe it looks like an eye.
Yes, it absolutely looks like an eye. I would show you a picture of it if I had my phone right now. But there are a lot of good evidence for this. And like you would say, okay, well, it's in the Sahara Desert. So it's obviously not fitting some of the criteria for Plato because it's in the desert.
Ocean. It's not in the ocean.
It's not in the ocean. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, let's go back like several thousand years and like see what the African continent was like before modern day. And it turns out
I've been looking for technology to take me back then, but my time machine only goes back to a certain year.
Well, you, my friend, might need the chronovisor.
Putting it on.
Patent pending.
Yeah, patent pending. We will go visit that place.
Okay, so there are some old maps. Like I mentioned the Piri Reis map earlier. Talk about Antarctica with the ice-free coast. That map and a couple other maps around like the same time period show a very warped version of the Earth as we know it, but because it's very like Mediterranean centric, because that's where we were making our maps from.
Rome is all about it,
right? Exactly. But you see on the maps that like everything radiates out from the Mediterranean, and you see Africa down below. And in Africa, can't remember if it's called Africa or not, but you have a spot over to the left hand side of the map, and it's called Atlantis. And there's a little dot there, and it's like ATLANTAE. And this is not the only map that this appears on. There is actually a handful of maps where you see an Atlantis appear in an African orientation.
Seriously?
Absolutely. And okay, so we say, okay, well, there's not an ocean here to swallow up where the Richat structure is in Mauritania. And so it wouldn't fit Plato's criteria. But going back to our flood myths from before, and what may have caused a flood myth or what may have caused a global flood or a sea level rise 12,000 years ago, is this comet impact that hit the ice sheet that caused a sea level rise. And you have a blatant pattern of, water that has cascaded across the upper part of Africa and flowed down to the Atlantic Ocean, sort of from an east to west, sort of like and a north to south sort of pattern, where there was a river in prehistory that would have crossed this very spot where the Rishok structure exists today.
I don't know if this is the gin convincing me, but holy smokes. I'm thinking even of like what salt does to like, so on the Gulf Coast, whenever salt hits the coast, it destroys all green life because the salt just doesn't allow it to. And so this is just adding to it. Oh my gosh. And again, guys, if this is a gin, forgive us, but
okay, well, I'm glad that you mentioned the salt because the salty dog, and that brings us all back to it. If you look at the pictures of the Rishok structure, and if you watch any videos that give it evidence for this argument, you will see this white sort of sediment that appears in sort of like a pattern towards the bottom of it, and it's salt. It's salt
my gosh!
In the Sahara Desert that proves salt water was there at a certain point.
Holy smokes.
And I'll give you one better, Jesse. To prove that it was not from like millions of years ago, that the salt was like more recently, is because there was a volcano that erupted. I don't have the name of it, but there's a volcano that is to the east of where the Rishok structure is, probably like straight down from where Egypt is. And this volcano erupted in a certain like pattern, and you can see where like the lava flow happened over the countryside. Like on like a Google map sort of thing, like a topographical map. And you can see that the lava flow got cut off. And we know when the volcano happened. We know for sure that the volcano happened at like, I want to say like 13, 14,000 years ago or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but we know when the volcano happened. And the volcanoes of lava flow got cut off by this obvious saltwater flow that happened, that went across the Rishok structure at a certain point in history about 12,000 years ago. And the salt has all settled in the crevices, and you see where the concentric circles and the waves would have formed around these like circular islands and canals that Plato described in his description of Atlantis.
Welcome to Legends and Libations. We just found out where Atlantis was, my friends.
Exactly. And
oh my goodness.
I will continue to blow your mind about this, because people will try to debunk this and say, oh, well, if this is where Atlantis was, this is where if the Rishok structure is where Atlantis was, then how come we haven't found the remains of like pottery, and we haven't found the remains of people, and we haven't found the remains of buildings if it was such an advanced civilization?
It's a good question.
Okay. I mean, fair question.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
Fair question. All right. I got one for you. Okay. If you go over a couple of 100 miles to the Atlantic Ocean, where this wave that would have taken out this place where the Rishok structure is in Mauritania is, you find something that's called the Mauritania Slide that is in the ocean right adjacent to where the path of a big eruption of a wave would have occurred. And there are thousands of feet of sediment from some sort of cataclysm happening to have water cascade across the continent and push land and mass and everything into the ocean, and that is now buried at the bottom of the sea in the Atlantic off the coast of Mauritania.
And even thinking further, like Plato got this legend from Egypt.
And it's in Africa.
A couple 100 years later from when it was actually given to him. Holy smokes, guys. We did find Atlantis. You're welcome.
I love this theory for Atlantis, because like, why would Egypt know about it before Greece would know about it?
Yeah,
it's because it happened closer to them.
Because it happened right there.
Yeah, exactly.
In the cradle of civilization.
Absolutely. And if you look back, there are research papers. Okay, so I'll give a shout out to this guy who does a YouTube channel called Bright Insight.
Thank you, Bright Insight.
Thank you, Bright Insight. He's the one that's really shed a lot of light on this Rishok structure theory of Atlantis. And he's kind of annoying personality-wise, but
we forgive you.
We forgive you.
It's hard to be right.
He's been on Joe Rogan. You can hear him talk on there, but he makes some good points regardless. And one of the important things that I think that he says is that you have a wave or like a cataclysm or something, like a flood myth that we talked about earlier, that's happening, and that it's coming across the whole continent.
It's because it's taken everything.
We'll say even if it's not, okay, let me I'm getting excited about this now because I love talking about it. It's the gin.
Get excited.
I mean, it's the gin, and it's ancient archaeology.
Yeah,
Ancient archaeology like makes me so excited. Okay, so if you have this Younger Dryas impact hypothesis that we talked about earlier, where you talk about the comet that hit an ice sheet potentially and like released a lot of fresh water into the oceans and stuff like that. Well, if that happened on dry land anywhere, that you would have massive amounts of fresh water flooding from dry land locations over those locations before it settled into the sea, right? And that caused a lot of geographical impacts in places like North America, where you see it happening in like Washington State and stuff like that. And in the Black Sea as well, they show in like above Turkey and in Russia, show where repeated flooding caused massive, sorry, I'm hitting my microphone. I'm so excited. They show that it had massive impacts upon the landscape. Mm-hmm. So if you had this happen in antiquity in the Sahara Desert, that it would cause, you would have this difference between there being this river that existed like millions of years ago that divided Africa, and like it kind of cut off the area where Morocco and Libya and those sort of Western African countries, there was some sort of waterway. I don't know if you call it a river, if it was like ginormous, bigger than the Great Lakes and stuff like that. But it was obviously not what caused the water to wash over the Rishok structure, because this went from north to south, and the Rishok structure was more over here in the western side. So it's obviously a laterally moving water force that cascaded over this place. And so that means that it happened less than 12,000 years ago, which is right around the time when Plato said that Atlantis was destroyed.
Seriously. That is insane. Guys, again, welcome to Legends and Libations, where we're figuring shit out.
I mean, how can you not love this theory of the Rishok structure if you just think about how you have not heard of it before?
Exactly.
Why have you not heard of it before? It's like you've got Great Wall of China, you've got the rainforest, you've got every single like Native American mounds.
Why are we not okay
Stonehenge,
with this structure?
You've got the pyramids. You should have heard about this if it is as significant as it is.
And yet here we sit.
And this goes along the same path as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis that we were talking about earlier, where you have the water erosion on the Sphinx, and the Sahara could have been like a green, sort of like lush forested area for a while.
Yeah.
Because the climate was entirely different. We can't look at it through a lens that we look at it today. We could say that it was absolutely different back then. I don't know.
And sometimes we think the world is so concrete, and the world's just not
fixed.
Concrete.
Exactly.
Nothing's fixed about it. Right now, as we speak,
dude,
the continent of Africa is splitting into two continents. You're welcome, everyone who didn't know that. Go ahead and look it up.
I didn't know that. Jesse just told me that today.
And so I want you guys to like think about, the world is moving, whether you like it or not. Everything you think is moving.
Absolutely.
And so if we're thinking 2360 years ago, 80 years ago, the world is moving. Our world isn't the same as Plato's, and Plato's isn't the same as where he originally got the legend, and where he originally got the legend isn't the same. So here,
but our human brains are about the same.
Yeah, they haven't changed. Sorry, guys. You guys are still a product of evolution, a product of some divine will. You guys are the same as you ever will be. You're welcome.
We're capable of understanding like the same
exactly. And so
magnitude of knowledge.
Exactly. And so the world is shifting, and the way that you view it, it's either you could argue some science, you could argue by gods,
or some dates.
Yeah, some dates. But the reality is the land that we're living on right now is shifting, and you have no control, because the gods are wild. The gods are nature, and they're wild and barbaric, and they don't care what you say.
Why that temple was wild and barbaric.
Exactly.
In the center of Atlantis.
Exactly.
Listen to this, Jesse. When I was watching a video about this Rishok structure theory, that they talked about something where, like, say that you have a massive amount of weight on a continent of land on one side of the planet. Say you have a massive glacier, or like an ice sheet over North America. and something happens to that ice sheet that causes it to melt and flow into the ocean. And so there's no longer that massive amount of weight that is on that continent is not supporting that massive amount of weight anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it is relieved of that weight that it is going to expand upward.
Yeah, because why wouldn't it? Because
Right.
it's not carrying the same weight and heaviness as it was before. Yeah.
And every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So on
Science, bitch.
thank you, Isaac Newton
We appreciate
and
you.
Jesse Pinkman. On the other side of the planet, because of that difference in pressure or whatever, since that part of the continent was able to rise,
Yeah.
that the opposite part might sink. Like it's like holding a balloon animal or whatever.
Yeah,
when you are
exactly.
squeezing one part of it, and the part of the other
part
side
expands.
is right. But if you release that part, then that opposite part is going to contract.
Exactly.
So, what's to say that would not cause the sinking of continents in other parts of the world that are not impacted by like an astronomical event?
If you guys aren't convinced of Atlantis by now, you're probably just not following logic anymore.
And if you are not convinced by Atlantis, then just wait for them to study that the slide that has cast off into the Atlantic Ocean. If they study that, then I bet that could be the smoking gun.
I'm not suggesting it's a perfect society like Plato suggested.
No,
He has a
absolutely
utopian
not.
idea that he wants to
No,
progress.
but there were rivers that traversed the Sahara like during this time period.
Yeah.
Like the Sahara was not the barren wasteland of a desert that we know of it as today.
Exactly.
Like if it had rivers that were like flowing through it, which formed the concentric circles
that would have created
of Atlantis with the canals and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That it would have been a hub for trade where it would have been busy all day and the night, like Plato described, unlike some of the other examples like Iceland and the Bimini Road and other places that are far away.
This place makes sense.
Right, exactly. So if you go out past the Pillars of Hercules and you turn to the left,
there is Northern Africa.
There's Northern Africa
the Sahara
right there.
Desert.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I like this theory a lot. And you heard it here on Legends of Libations. Go check it out on Bright Insight. But also, we have some other theories in case this one doesn't like float your boat.
Yeah, if you're like, hey, I love Celtic things more.
And the Anglo-Saxon sphere.
You sickos.
But we like that too.
Yeah, we do too. Tell me. I think I've heard something about Ireland.
Ireland. Oh, it always goes back to Ireland.
Ark of the Covenant, Stone of Destiny.
So
everything's on
If the
Ireland.
Rishok structure and its concentric circles, or Tartessos in Spain, which are my two personal favorites.
Those two are probably true.
If
one of the two.
If one of the two are not, then it's Cyprus, because Cyprus was pretty cool as well.
But fourth, I'd let Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay,
Tell us
so Ireland
why.
has its own Atlantis myth. It's not necessarily like Atlantis per se.
But it's Atlantis adjacent.
It has something mysterious and mythological about it.
Oh, that beautiful Celtic land, my friend.
I know, it just seems to always like draw us back to it. It's like the siren song of Ireland.
It always calls us back. We can't help it.
Okay,
We
for
love
some
it.
reason, this one is called the Island of High Brazil.
Have you ever heard of it? Listen.
HY-BRASIL. High Brazil. You may have heard of this island. It was discovered off the coast of Ireland for many hundred of years, I'd say, between the 1000 AD and present times.
Yeah, people wrote about it.
Yeah, people wrote about it. People visited it. There are people inhabiting there.
Monasteries and whatnot.
But sometime around, I would say, the early 19th century or so.
Pretty recent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It stopped appearing on maps.
Stopped appearing on maps. That's before the World Wars, my friends.
And I think that it might have disappeared. This island of High Brazil.
Just gone.
They might have been able to see it off the coast of Ireland for a while.
But all of a sudden, the fog was too
No,
deep.
they sent expeditions like, hey, you Lord of the whatever, go to this island and claim it for us. And they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go there, and
Yeah,
like
we'll
it's
do it.
here. This is
We'll stick
1740.
our flag in it.
Right.
We'll claim it.
This is 1743, and this is places for Ireland. And then after a while, when they did that, it wasn't there anymore.
Isn't that mysterious?
It is mysterious. It's called High Brazil. I would check it out. Like, it's an island that disappeared in modern times. And it's not the only instance of an island disappearing.
It's not.
No, there is an island off the coast of Mexico, which I like this story. Let me see if I have a name for this, and I don't think that I do. I just call it the Mexican island, but
We'll call it the Mexican Island.
Mexican island. Okay, so off the coast of Mexico for many hundreds of years, there was an island, and when it was referred to in maps and cartographers, they mapped it out as being this island off the coast of Mexico.
Just some random island.
Right. And it happened to be there until the time that it came for America and Mexico to draw the borders between what would become like the oil and mineral rights for the countries.
Really? Wow.
And when it came down to it, America was like, all right, Mexico, we will claim this land up for our oil rights up until your land starts right around here. And Mexico was like, oh, but our land starts at this island out here. And they went to go look for the island, and it was gone.
What?
Yes.
Are you sick?
So then America is like, okay, well, we're getting these oil rights for this land right here, or for like beneath the ocean.
What?
And so the conspiracy is that the CIA might have blown up this
Sunken island? The CIA sunken
island to get the oil rights for American companies.
Yeah, so
check it out.
capitalism at its finest, my
yes,
friends.
exactly. We'll
Sink an
sink an island. We will sink your island.
If you claim oil rights, we will sink your island.
This is exactly the place where like George Bush's family had their like oil dynasty formed in the Caribbean. So it does not even surprise me at all because of how much they became like part of the CIA.
Yeah, guys, your government's sinking islands to convince you of things.
I love it though.
I don't mean to be a conspiracist, but seriously.
Yes.
Another theory I heard is that Ireland itself was in fact Atlantis.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I've been reading a book called How Ireland Saved Civilization, or How the Irish Saved Civilization. I don't know. I've been drinking a lot of gin.
I'm gonna give you some more gin.
Oh,
Jesse.
thank God. Just pour the gin. Just give me gin. You don't even need ice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
He's
I can
going
handle
straight for it.
Yeah, guys, we went from salty dog to gin.
Bombay Sapphire.
Bombay
This is
Sapphire.
straight imperialism.
Yeah, straight imperialism. So, I can't even remember where I heard this theory. Oh, well, that's just a nice glass of gin right there. Oh,
That's
my
what you
goodness.
asked for, I think.
I don't think I will. I don't think I'll eat any more after this. Holy smokes, I taste juniper berries.
I need a juniper berry just so I can like have an A/B reference for what it actually tastes like.
Yeah, just drink that by itself, bud.
Yeah.
So here's the idea is that Ireland itself is Atlantis.
Explain it to me.
Yeah, so Ireland cradles civilization. So what happens at the fall of Rome is when Rome falls, they're losing all of their technology, all of their writings, all of everything. And Rome doesn't fall in a day. It falls in like a handful of years. The pre-Vikings clans and tribes are attacking it, and it doesn't sustain. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hold itself. And Rome is no longer a thing.
So when Rome fell, like, was it gone?
No. So Rome, the city, is still there.
With
Pope
like the
is still
hobos
there.
and that.
But there's less than 1 million people in Rome.
Okay. So the civilization ceased to exist.
Ceased to exist. The only way it exists is through the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And
So the Catholic Church held it together through the fall of Rome.
what the Catholic
Empire.
Church held together was both morality and a religious obligation. So you couldn't be like, hey, I'm going to go to war with France because guess what? They're the same religion as you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and what's the main what's the main person of the religion? Jesus. Who's like, love your enemy.
Right.
So it creates a pretty like soft, it creates a pretty solid but gentle religion that holds Europe together. But at the same time, Europe is made up of ex-Vikings and Ireland.
Ethnic
Ireland,
groups.
yeah. Ireland is not part of the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
The religion through St. Patrick.
Wait, is it the HRE, the Holy Roman Empire?
No. That doesn't exist for another couple hundred years. Yeah, you're thinking 800-900s is when the Holy Roman Empire comes about.
Okay, so this is around
and
like
this is around
3 or
4 or 500.
4 or 500. Okay.
And Ireland is taking on Catholicism, but it's not taking on Rome because there is no Rome to take on.
We don't want the bureaucracy.
Oh yeah, the only bureaucracy is within the church.
Right.
And that somewhat actually in this weird, strange way. And I've been reading a book called How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. It's the gin.
Thomas Cahill.
Is it Cahill?
I don't know.
Well, gin.
It's Cahil.
HIL, I think it is.
bet it
Anyways,
is.
it's how the Irish saved civilization.
We'll see.
And so what happens is that the Irish take on the religion. Of course, what does Christianity over paganism teach is this kind of kindness.
Whitewashing of the one, I would say. Or like
there's a oneness.
The Christianity like destroys the paganism.
Yeah, well, there's no longer the gods of nature, but a God who cares about
modern
you.
times we see more of like a merging of these two in the places where it takes over, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this happened as far back as
so we're thinking 500s.
Okay.
And the Druid people are all of a sudden not fighting against the gods, but realizing that the one God, even in their suffering, cares for them. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they take on the whole of Roman civilization without taking on Roman civilization. I know it sounds weird and contrary. They take on the morality and the social system
without the bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah. And
or without having to pay respects to like the specifics.
The Roman emperor and
exactly.
to some state way out there. They're no longer connected to the state of Rome.
That's probably a good view to take.
Yeah. So they're totally connected to the good gentleness and morality of Christianity without the state of Rome. And holy smokes, this revolutionizes Ireland. Ireland comes from Viking-esque to a country that you would want to live in. It's green. There's fountains and
it's the Emerald Island.
It's the Emerald Islands. It's green. There's things growing. And guess what? They're not just going to go war for no reason. They're not Vikings anymore. So Ireland is in fact, by its connection to civilization and recreating civilization, taking all of what was good about Rome and departing from what was garbage, like all the bureaucracy.
Essentially.
Yeah, essentially. It takes on all of that is good, which what is Christianity without Rome is essentially gentleness, kindness, mercy.
Without imperialism.
Yeah, without imperialism. It's no longer as attached to that Roman structure.
It's hard to disconnect the two from each other.
Well, because so much the imperial cultures have prospered so much off of
Just like it was hard for Plato to disconnect his view of the Republic away from like the utopianness of
we
Atlantis.
naturally want to attach the goodness that we learn from our civilization to the utopian idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and here Rome is attached to the religion of the utopia without the bureaucracy of the utopia. And all of a sudden, it is that Ireland, who's removed from all of Europe and even removed from England,
Britain itself. Yeah, exactly.
It never was taken over by the Roman Empire. It is the one who gives the Roman Empire, the old Roman Empire, back its civilization. But it doesn't give back like this bullshit bureaucracy.
Right.
It gives back Christendom.
It's getting a pure version of it.
One that says, love your enemy, treat others with respect and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
It is love. It is truly one of the most genuine exchanges of virtue.
So they realized that they were not born of this virtue that they
have
discovered themselves.
That they received it from St. Patrick himself, who passed on the gospel from some outpost of the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And so here, Ireland gives back the virtue and religion to Rome when Rome falls. Rome falls. Europe is looking for some sanctity.
They give it back to them.
Some salvation. And what do they find is but the purity of Christendom that says, love your enemy and treat each other with mercy, kindness, and grace.
And what do they do with that?
They don't create Atlantis. Sorry, they don't create Atlantis. Atlantis is actually lost in the
antediluvian world.
Yeah,
in a single day and a night, and they are swallowed up by the sea.
Swallowed up because
just like we have been swallowed up by the salty dogs.
The salty dogs have swallowed us up,
and the juniper berries.
And the juniper berries then now consume our hearts, and we no longer can talk logically with you, but we only can talk with great emotion that I don't even know what we could talk about.
I don't know, but I would like to leave you with our consensus. I think that if Atlantis is not in the Rishok structure or in Tartessos off Spain or off the island of Cyprus, which I don't think that it is, I would say put that as like a distant third.
Yeah, distant
that
third.
It was not real, but that's my
I genuinely think that it was in Africa, that North African.
The Rishok structure in Mauritania.
Yeah. I think that is the most logical.
So I want to say the Legends and Libations official position, real or fake, Jesse?
Yeah, we don't know, but
we don't know. But if it was
we genuinely
real,
support.
I like the Rishok structure.
Me too.
I think it looks awesome.
And yes, Plato added to it to add virtue to people, add virtue to civilization, which isn't wrong, my friends.
Right, but that was like adding a love story to an action movie. It wasn't like adding a civilization to a story that already had a thriving civilization. Like yeah, I like that.
That's where we stand.
We'll go with that. Mauritania. It should be on everybody's radar. You should check it out on YouTube. But you heard it here first.
And go ahead and make yourself a salty dog. Or 3 or 6. I'm not sure where we're at.
We're at the grapefruit juice level.
Yeah.
Where it's affecting my medications.
And go ahead and just think about it, and you too will accept it. We appreciate you guys.
And we will see you next time with a legend and a libation. We don't know if we're going to do a person, a place, a myth, or an object.
But holy smokes, you guys have been writing us like crazy, and we have some options, and we want to satisfy every one of your needs.
And one of my things about Atlantis, okay, I'll go ahead and say this out there. Like I said, Atlantis is one of the things that we would never do because there's too much for it.
There's so much
for it, and I feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, we can't complete this, guys.
But it ended up being
just a joyful experience.
Yes, exactly.
We're here for you.
We stumbled upon some stuff that we never believed that we would come across, and I'm glad that we undertook Atlantis. So every challenge, we will accept it as it comes, and we will try to give you the best Legends and Libations content that we can.
Even if we have to make up the salty dog to satisfy it. Okay, guys, we thank you. We
appreciate you for listening.
Yeah.
Smash like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it.
Send it to your friends who don't listen to podcasts because
they don't know what a podcast is.
They don't know that we're badass and we care about them and we want to hear from them.
Yes. We love you. We look for you next week.
We can't wait to hear from you. All right. We'll see you guys soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.